why it's a good idea to invest in the Human Givens Diploma. When we started teaching this material, for many, many people, it was like a breath of fresh air. Something really odd happens when you learn new skills and when you suddenly realise that you understand something that you didn't understand before. 3 things happen. One is that you feel great, and that's because endorphins are rushing through your system, which is the reward nature gives us when we do learn something. The second thing is that it boosts your confidence. The third thing, and perhaps the most important, is that with new skills and new ideas, new understandings, you gain spare capacity so that you can continue to develop as a human being, learn more, experience more, and understand more. So these 3 elements were the source of the success of the Human Givens approach when we started teaching it, because people were learning things that nobody else had taught them, and they were understanding things in new ways. The book that we produced on this sold in tens of thousands, got to 15 on Amazon, which we're still proud about, up against cat books and celebrity books and all sorts of other books, and there we were, right at the top, because so many people were looking for some really new ideas about human behaviour, mental health and well-being. Here's what one person said, Dr. Nick Bayliss from Cambridge University. He said, "Harnessed between these pages are scientific insights and practical techniques of sufficient power to completely revolutionise our approach to parenting, to teaching and the caring professions generally. I wholeheartedly recommend Human Givens to any individual with a burning interest in how life works and how it can be helped to work better." That was the kind of response we were getting from very interesting people. The Human Givens Diploma is an intelligent, practical, skills-based psychotherapy course, essentially. But it has functioned for and used for all sorts of other people. We've had teachers do it, nurses, GPs, speech therapists, sports trainers, business people, managers. It's because the ideas are so central to what it is to be a human being. But essentially it's built around this idea, and it evolved out of this idea of trying to do something better for the country in the way of psychotherapy and counselling than was the case when we started, and actually still is largely the case. There's so much awful counselling and psychotherapy about that we said, well, we must be able to do better than this with what we know about human behaviour and what we know works, and with ideas that we were also able to introduce into Human Givens. So it's actually proven to be revolutionising a lot of people's work in psychotherapy and counselling, those that are allowed to use it. And the reason for this success and this usefulness is that the Human Givens operates from a much larger organising idea than any of the other models of therapy. An organising idea is something that brings information and data together in such a way that it's easier to understand it. It's easier to think about people and behaviour and problems in behaviour and so on when you've got a large organising idea. And that's what the Human Givens is. It's a larger organising idea than on offer from any other forms of working with mental health issues. But the wonderful thing about our successful graduates is that they are capable then of dealing effectively with all kinds of emotional distress that people suffer from, including depression, panic attacks, anxiety disorders, anger disorders, addictions, relationship problems, obsessions, obsessional behaviour, excessive stress symptoms, and phobias, and also post-traumatic stress disorder, where all these things are treated more swiftly by Human Givens therapists than other forms of therapy, including those touted by, for example, NICE guidelines like CBT, which actually isn't terribly effective. So these underlying skills and Human Givens principles are being employed in all sorts of fields, not just in psychotherapy and counselling. For example, in education. I mean, one case, we've had head teachers and their school counsellors, and actually some teachers and teaching assistants do the diploma. And one head teacher said that they had the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services, CAMS, phone them up and said, why aren't you sending us any children to deal with? And the head teacher just told them, she said, well, we're Human Givens based now, so we actually deal with the children and their families directly ourselves straight away, rather than putting them on a 3-month waiting list for CAMS. So this is wonderful, because it means that more children are getting beneficial help faster, simply because there are adults out there who understand what's needed. And it's also being used in business, in management, business coaching, and we even have interest in the diplomatic field in these ideas because they have relevance there too. One of the things that people like about Human Givens is psychobabble free. We actually used to put that on some of our educational material, our flyers, our prospectuses, because if you actually go and study psychotherapy, for example, psychoanalytical psychotherapy, you'll find it's full of psychobabble, meaningless phrases that are dressed up to try and make it look more scientific or more serious or something. But in fact, what we know from experience is if you can talk to ordinary people in ordinary language about why they're suffering from stress or depression, or explain what depression is to them, they get it. People are not stupid. But if you talk to them using jargon, that they feel disempowered and inferior. And that's a type of approach to therapy that we certainly don't espouse at all. We say that it should be psychobabble free. The training on Human Givens Diploma is psychobabble free. There's things you have to learn, of course, and some of it is a bit psychologically technical, but it's not difficult. And you have to be able to express that to ordinary patients, because peer-reviewed published research in Mental Health Review, for example, has said that one of the reasons the Human Givens approach is so successful, much better, for example, at getting people out of mild to moderate depression in a third of the time than situation normal in the NHS, is because of the psychoeducation we're able to do with patients, explaining why they're getting depressed and what they can do about it very easily in ordinary language. I just want to quickly tell you what the route to a qualification is, because people are always asking us this. Well, how do I get the diploma? What does it involve? Well, the first thing is part one. It's a series of seminars and workshops that you have to do before you can take part two. Now, these are the occasions when you do learn new skills, and you find out, you learn things that you never knew it was possible to learn, that you had no idea about such things as anger disorders, anxiety disorders, why addictions form in people so easily, why anything that's pleasurable can become addictive, and the cycle of depression. All these things we teach, and we teach people on these courses how to de-traumatize people, and language skills that they can use in counselling and psychotherapy and in other spheres as well. These skills are really fundamental to effective psychotherapy and counselling, but they're also fundamental in good teaching and education as well. One of the innovative things that we introduce, or ideas that we introduced, is that you can do individual courses, workshops and seminars, some of which, by the way, are online, so you don't even have to leave your home to do them. And they count. If you decide to go on and do the whole diploma, they count towards the diploma, but they're enough to give you a taster to see if it really is for you or not. So you do these courses, you start to meet people and talk to people, you read material, and then you can apply to do part two. And part two is 2 weeks intensive training, and it is intensive, make no mistake, but fabulous fun. The weeks are separated by about a month, so it's not 2 weeks together, so there's 2 separate weeks. And in those weeks, you experience what it's like to be a therapist, and you watch therapy with real patients. We bring patients in and we film therapy sessions with them, and then when the patient's gone, the patient gives us permission to show the films back to the group, and we explain what we were doing, what the language, point out the language skills used, etc., etc. And this is hugely instructive. People are demonstrated the skills, and then they practice the skills. And this goes on all throughout the first week. And in the second week, we get down to specific topics like anxiety disorders, how to de-traumatize people. We go through that again. Although you've done it in the first part one, we cover it again. Again, we have the patients that we saw in the first week come back to see how they fared, and hopefully 9 times out of 10 they've seen some improvements, sometimes dramatic improvements when they return. And at the end of that week, there's a little simple, straightforward exam which tells us whether you absorbed the organising ideas and integrated them into yourself. And then we go on to part 3. To be a practicing psychotherapist, you actually have to film yourself doing therapy, or get somebody to film you with a real patient and write a short report on what you did and why you did. 2 films actually we require for that. And the reason for that is that we need evidence. Supposing a complaint was to come about, we need to say, well, actually this person at this time, and we can demonstrate it on film, was a very good therapist, good enough to get the Human Givens Diploma. So that's part 1, part 2, part 3 of the Human Givens Diploma. And you can apply online or by phoning up the office to start the whole process. Of course, people doing part 3, they might say to themselves, well, how am I going to find a patient? Well, you'd be amazed how easy it is for most people to find a patient. But what usually happens is, by that time you've got a supervisor, and they will help you in find somebody from your area. It should be somebody you don't know, and it's who's never had therapy before, preferably, or if they haven't had human givens therapy, so they're coming to you fresh, and you can demonstrate the skills going through, for example, the RIGAR model that we teach, which is rapport building, information gathering, setting a clear goal, a clear understanding of what the person wants, so they're not waffling on for months or years, with no really clear idea what they're supposed to be doing. Auditing the resources that a person has. Can they do this in their lives? Do they know how to do this? Agreeing a strategy with a patient, and then the last R in RIGAR is rehearsing in their imagination, them making the changes they need to get out of their depression or stop this anxiety stimulation that's going on, making them dysfunctional. So you'll find that there are a lot of people out there. I mean, something like 1/4 of the population have got mental health problems according to the World Health Organization. So that's not me saying that, but I must admit, as I look around any town, any village, there's an awful lot of very strange, stressed people around. So it's not that difficult to find somebody. All you've got to do is find somebody who agreed to let you film them and show the film to a supervisor. What this Human Givens Diploma course offers you: firstly, really valuable knowledge about human behaviour, and why we do the funny things that we do, and why people can get so distressed so easily, depressed or anxious, become addicts of one sort or another, and give you expertise, the means to improve your professional skills and do something for these people. Do something, you get tucked into solving problems for them, helping them. You're proactive. It's not just endlessly actively listening to people. It's really proactive, helping people get back on their feet as quickly as possible. So the best methods for helping people live depression and overcome addictions and deal with relationship problems and anxiety disorders and anger disorders and so on are taught on this course really intensely, to make sure you get it, you understand it, and can actually use them. And it's not that difficult. The wonderful thing about this really is that because in psychology and psychotherapy there's this kind of urge to try and be scientific and to be up there with physics and chemistry and all these other things, is that people try and make it more complicated than it needs to be. It isn't that complicated. People have been helping one another for thousands of years. The very term psychotherapy was coined over 1,000 years ago in Central Asia. And there are examples of brilliant therapy sessions from that period in the literature. So this is something people have been learning probably since the Stone Age. somebody would see something needs doing and seeing that a person's disturbed, and they'd go and help them. Depression, for example, is just a signal that something's not working with a person. And it's, in certain types of societies, what we call primitive societies, where they're living at a slower pace, you don't get much depression, because people can see the person's upset about something, and the village or group comes round and helps them sort it all out. The classic example of that, of course, is if a barn burns down in the Amish community, say in America, the whole community comes around and rebuilds the barn. The person doesn't get all depressed and worrying about the mortgage and how am I going to get my barn together again. None of that happens. And so they don't start the worry cycle and start excessive dreaming and waking up exhausted and all the sort of things that happens to depressed people. Another advantage of this is it's a means to earn a living. You can actually earn a good living as a good psychotherapist. People will refer, GPs will get to hear of you, and this is what happens. You get referrals and referrals. And the people that you help quickly will recommend you to friends and to other people. So you can earn a comfortable living as a therapist. Many do, if they're any good. So what I think is also interesting is it gives you a greater degree of self-knowledge. You actually have a better understanding of yourself, and because you understand other people, you're outward focused, that enriches your own inner life. After completing the 3 parts of the diploma, graduates can then join the register on the Human Givens Institute as a fully qualified Human Givens therapist. And that register is accredited in the UK by the Professional Standards Authority, the PSA. So it means our register is on exactly the same level as, for example, the British Association of Counselling and Psychotherapy, UKCP, and various other bodies. It's registered by the Professional Standards Authority. And then you'll join a peer group and become part of the Human Givens community, which has a conference every couple of years, major conferences in one of the university towns. We've just done one in Dublin, we've done in York and London. And these conferences are on big topics, like, for example, mental health in the digital age, or the innate need for meaning, or relationships. So we take a big theme and we really go into it in depth from the Human Givens approach with various different speakers working away. So your peer group supports you, helps you set up in practice, and you're given guidance from the Institute how to set up practice if that's what you want to do. Although, of course, many people we've trained actually work in the NHS or work in the education system, and some of them work in business too. So there's all kind of options once you've got the diploma where you can use this information to further your career. All in all, it's an exciting diploma to do for many, many reasons. And I hope that we'll see you considering doing parts 1, 2 and 3 of it, and start off by finding out more about it. There's even a free ebook introducing you to these ideas. And there's, of course, the big book that's caused all the excitement, which is the Human Givens book. Well, thank you for listening to the end, and I hope that you've found the information useful and interesting, and that you decide to join in the Human Givens community, because there's work to be done. There really is work to be done. This world is in a right old mess at the moment, and it needs people with understanding and with skills and with the commitment to try and make a difference to it. So thank you.